All right, guys. Best Ball Bros, episode 1. Couldn't think of a better guest to have on as we kick off this. I don't want to call it an interview series because it's really not that serious, right? We're best ball players. We're not, this isn't some super formal podcast, but I'm excited to start this every Wednesday at this time, bringing on different people from around the best ball industry, of all kinds of names. And like I said, I couldn't think of a better person than the richest man in best ball now. He's won the biggest prize in all of season long in best ball. Underdog Ball Mania II this year. Liam Murphy. We're going to chop it up, shoot the shit, and he's going to answer your questions and give away not all of his. You're not going to be able to replicate exactly what he did maybe from this, but Liam is super open, and we're super blessed to have him here to chop it up for a little bit. So Best Ball Bros, episode 1, let's get it.
Intro.
Here we are. Yeah, we're really diving into this best ball stuff, man. We're getting new intros, we're getting new thumbnails. I was excited. People were excited about the thumbnail. I was excited to get it going. But Liam, thanks for joining us. We got to kick this off with the first question. I won't tease your funny story that you're probably already going to tell here shortly. But like, what was the feeling? Because you had it kind of early, right? For everyone, I guess, that doesn't even know, Liam won Best Ball Mania II for $1,001 just this week on Underdog Fantasy. What was the feeling when, like, you knew you won, basically, right? Because it was probably sometime, I guess maybe Sunday night. I'm not really sure. Just describe kind of that whole process.
So first off, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to talking about this. I'm debating, breaking into content about best ball. I already kind of make content for a chess website, Chess Kids. So, that's why I have like the mic and camera and everything. But so it was crazy, and it definitely still has not hit me. So I'll kind of just thank you, Paul. I'll kind of just walk you through the evening. So I'm at a bachelor party with my best friend from home, right? So and this is crazy because this is my second year playing best ball. We'll get more in details there later. But, last year, I have a group chat with my boys from home who we were on all the intramural sports leagues together, and so we would, I'm in this intramural chat. They're not into fantasy football like me. I'm sure they just viewed this as degenerate gambling, which I definitely partake in. I've been gambling since I was 18.
Right.
And so I'm texting them last year, and I'm like, boys, if I make this live finals, this sweat would be sick, or this just such a sick sweat. We could all get together in the bars, we could watch the games.
Yeah.
And I got bounced in the quarterfinals. I only played on DraftKings last year, best ball. I got bounced in the quarterfinals of all those tournaments. But this year, just so happens, the bachelor party is scheduled for my cousin, who's really closer to a brother than me because we grew up in the same town. And so we're down in the Keys, and I text, I was like, boys, I got a 1 in 160 shot at this thing just off of math. And I looked through the teams beforehand, and honestly, I thought I was way more live than just pure math, just because I'll go into that later, but just because I had such good leverage on the field in spots you want leverage too. And so we watch we get breakfast Sunday morning. I enter DFS lineups with only my best ball roster guys.
That's amazing.
I'm not sweating anyone else. Like I'm just like doing combination. Like I'm doing like naked Josh Allen stacks. Like I'm like, like I'm telling a story here. Like if we're winning it, we're winning both. So I get the lineups in. We watch the morning games at the house, and I'm a huge Bills fan. So we got Red Zone on because my boys from home, they're all Pats fans. So we got Red Zone on, so we're doing both. And I got the Bills game on my phone. And so, and I had Josh Allen to Cole Beasley, which like the that was not really the stack I loved. I mean, it was like I didn't know if I personally think Isaiah McKenzie's just a better player at this point, but they're good at different things, right? And I also didn't like, from what I could tell, Atlanta plays a ton of like man coverage, and that's not who Cole is good against. He's good against zone, but maybe they're going to do zone because everyone was hurt. But anyway, so to get to the story, so we watched the morning games, and like Josh Allen gets 2 like rushing touchdowns. I'm like, well, this is fucking huge. And then like Jamar Chase I knew I would need him to crush because he was 6% owned. He was really my only like elite guy that I had at the wide receiver position. And so Chase is like, he gets that long touchdown, and I'm like, we're going crazy, we're chest bumping. Who else is going up? Damian Harris scores 2 touchdowns and then gets his hammy hurt, and he no longer plays anymore. And I was in the Best Ball Mania 2 final. I made the Puppy 1 final. I only did 11 of those drafts. And so I made the Puppy 1 final. I made the DraftKings $3 20 max final. And I made one of the preseason ones on Underdog, the
War Room.
I had a War Room live too. And so I'm sweating these guys. Damien's crushing. I forget all the morning guys there. Chase is crushing. Josh Allen's crushing, and I have a ton of afternoon players left. And not only do I have afternoon players, but I have correlation in my afternoon players because I had Kirk and Cooper. I had Penny and Amon-Ra. And so we watched the morning games, and I'm in good shape. I'm like, because there's only like 9 or 10 Chase lineups, right?
10. There are 10 total Chase lineups. So you knew right away, like, okay, like I'm super live just from Chase. And like you said, you had Damian Harris is off to a good start. Josh Allen's off to a good start. It was like a quarter in. We're a half hour into the slate, and you're like, holy shit! I'm
literally like having historic, like it's like Josh Allen's first one quarter 2 rushing touchdown. Like, first time getting 2 rushing touchdowns in a quarter in his career. I'm like, what a good time. And I mean, like Damian Harris was super high owned. He was like 30%. So I was like, oh, that's not separating me. But after the afternoon, or after the beginning games, I was in first in the Puppy 1. So I'm sitting.
Oh wow!
I was winning Puppy 1 because I had Singletary, I had Ramondre, I had like Jacoby Myers. Ooh. My Puppy 1 team is weird. It was 4 quarterback with McCaffrey, and I'm sitting in first after morning games.
Amazing.
And then we jump on an Uber and we go to the bar. We're like, all right, well let's watch that. And like, it's my boy's bachelor party too, so I'm like, like we don't have to sweat the games if you don't want to. Like, we can go do whatever. He's like, no, we're sweating the games. Like, come on. And like, he's a huge football guy, so that made it easy, So watching the game, and I'm like, all right, guys, like Noah Fant we are big Noah Fant people.
The leverage on Fant, especially because at that point, right? Just so for everyone that wasn't like following all this, I'm a little biased, right? Myself and Peter Overzet had a team that made it. We also had Jamar Chase. And so same thing, we were sitting after the early games, like fairly live. We established pretty quickly that we were both mostly drawing dead to you because you kind of had us covered in a couple spots, but same thing. You're like, oh my God, Mark Andrews was like 67% owned, I think, in the Best Ball Mania 2. And so basically if you had any other tight end, in which you had Noah Fant going in the afternoon games. Ironically, again, for more context for people, Noah Fant is out there against the Chargers in a very good matchup without none of the Broncos wide receivers are playing. So even more like reason for you to be optimistic after, Andrews had 11 points or something like that. So another spot for you, a massive, massive leverage spot for you in the afternoon.
Yeah, and I mean, so I had Mike Gesicki too. So I had like Gesicki was 6% and Fant was 3%. So Gesicki only was like losing to Andrews by 2 points. I was like, I would take that all day, just being down. Just being down 2, And then Cup obviously I was rooting hard to fail, but he didn't crush me. Like he scored a touchdown, which that's all that matters for Underdog, and so he scored a touchdown, and but it was like it was an okay game for him, and that was like the big game. I told the guys, I was like, we're looking forward to not hearing Andrews or Cup name this afternoon,
right?
And like these guys, like they're not huge fantasy football guys. They're like, oh, I really haven't heard too much about him. I'm like, yeah, this is going well, and so I thought I was live, but I was shocked that Penny was only 13% owned in the final. Because he had a good like playoffs overall. And and who becomes chalk in the playoffs is fascinating with like who does well which week. And so we're watching the afternoon games, and I have Penny and Amon-Ra really just like pulling away from me. Plus I have like Fant like I watch a lot of football, and like I was like, oh, maybe not the best thing Bridgewater's not in there, but actually every time I remember Fant like acing like an 80-yard touchdown, it's with Drew Lock. So maybe it's just like the Lock to Fant thing is something, and like so like I'm doing really good. I'm like winning, right? And I'm like I'm telling you guys, I'm like, guys, I'm in first, like and then when Fant scored that touchdown, like I got a huge lead. And so that's when like my one friend's like, oh, it's real now. Like I was like, yeah. And I mean it's still surreal. Like I picked up the tab obviously for everyone. I'm like, and I had said I was gonna buy a drink for everyone in the bar, but I'm in like we're sitting outside, but it's a huge bar. There's like hundreds of people there. I'm like, well, can't exactly do this because if I don't hold the million, I'm gonna be down bad, So then it comes to the night game, and the night game is Devontae. It's all about fading Devontae, but I had leverage on that chalk, which was great because I had Aaron Jones and MVS. Right? And MVS ended up being super chalk himself, but the Jones really, and I honestly I didn't need the running back points at that point because my 3 running backs were Penny, Penny, Taylor, and Damian Harris were counting for me for points already. And I had like one of the only 2 Jeff Wilson teams, which I drafted a ton of him, and that ran pure and almost even better. If
super close to like the stone nuts.
If like Mitchell does not come out of if he doesn't become who he is, like that was actually like that I could have had a ton more teams maybe, but so I'm like, okay, shit, I'm in first. We're watching the night games. Devontae is going off, and I saw your guys' team before, and I like there were a ton of teams I looked at. I considered like pooling every team into a document so someone could run the sims and everything like that. I got about 40 done. I'm like, I'm not doing this. But I saw your guys' team, and I was like, damn, that's a team that could actually beat me because you guys you also had low-owned running backs. You had low-owned tight ends. Like, if Pitts doesn't pull his hammy in the Bills game, maybe he scores a touchdown.
Right.
And so that was a place you could differentiate from me. And then you had better wide receivers than me with like guys that could have gone off with like CD and Devontae. So I was rooting for you guys to do well, but
finish second. But finish second to you, right?
Second. And so I'm about like I had 201 points at this point, and second place is like 185 or something. 185. Devontae puts up a huge game. I don't remember how many points he scored exactly, but he got one touchdown.
Well, yeah, only one. If he gets another one, you were still fine if he got another one, but it would have shook up a lot of the top 10 if he got another touchdown. Yeah,
Yeah, because there were some teams in the top 10 that didn't have Chase,
right.
which just like that was only possible because of the cheap guys who went off with Singletary, Ramondre, Penny, Amon-Ra.
Yep.
Um, and like, so it's still like, I don't know how to act. I'm not screaming crazy. I'm not like, I'm just, I'm still partying with the boys. We watch the night game. We go back. We watch the second half at the house, and I'm in first, and it's like I've like checked the teams, and I've like found the only Chubb team, which Chubb was made mega chalk too.
Yep.
And I see that like I've done the math, and like basically Chubb needs to score like 50 half point PPR points, and Claypool can't score. I have Claypool, so and Tyler Boyd was my third wideout. So plus any points Claypool scores over Boyd,
Overboard.
Chubb
Yeah.
has to do more than that. So obviously it would be like an all-time bad beat to lose it.
Yeah,
And like,
seriously. Yeah.
I mean, and like the difference between a mill and second place is just so massive for
Yep.
like, like with the mill, I'm like debating. I'm like, well, like I'm not gonna quit my job, but I'm like, well, I could like take a week off or something. Like,
Yeah.
but anything less than that, like I'm, like nothing really changes at all because it's just like
Yeah.
the magnitude is huge.
Yep.
And so my boys all have to go home in the morning, and so they fly home. Wild bachelor party, right? Like,
I'm sure.
yeah, like we had our own live final, which
Yeah. Right.
not a crew I'd want to sweat it with more in my life, and so I watched that whole next. I'm like dead tired now too because like we've been boozing all weekend, and I'm I crash and I take a nap, and I wake up just in time for the Steelers game, and like the game, like pretty much by half, I'm like, okay, like it's over. And that game was
Yep.
terrible football, but I was like, punt, yeah. And so,
every Big Ben 2-yard pass was like a celebration. The clock keeps rolling because
yeah,
Big Ben's
yeah,
completing a 2-yard pass, and no one's getting any real fantasy points. It was
yeah,
the dream. It was the dream.
yeah, it was. And I was just like, okay, yeah. And so, and now I mean, I still don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, I've never been in this situation before. I've been gambling for a long time, but I've never had to score anything close
Yeah.
to this. And so it's surreal, man. And I don't think it will hit me for a while. Like I
Right.
went to work yesterday. I went to work today. And I don't really know.
Do your coworkers know? Did you tell them? Did they already know? Like how did that go? Like you just show up
So
to like an 8 a.m. work meeting like after winning $1 million? How did that go?
no, so I mean, it's not a secret, right? Because like it's on Twitter, and like
Yeah.
I'm sure it would have gone out anyways. Like my boys from home know. I'm not gonna like post it on like my Facebook or something,
Right.
but like some of them follow me on Twitter. No one has asked me anything. I'm planning on like discussing it with my boss just for like more advice purposes.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think so because also my Twitter account was like really. I'm new to Twitter. This is I'm new to fantasy football Twitter. I think like this like this summer maybe I started my account, and so I don't have a ton of followers there. Very few people I actually know in real life. So I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah. Well, that part is probably going to change now after winning $1 million. But maybe we'll come back like this coming summer. We'll come back. Maybe we'll draft some 2022 teams, and we'll see where it's at that point with your however many followers you have now. It's going to be like 10 10x that or
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean,
So
especially if I make content because I do
yeah,
think I do think best ball is a fascinating game. And I knew early on that I thought I had a big edge in it, and there's a lot of things I liked that it didn't really help the other whales or the other sharks in the industry. Like it's a huge time investment, right? Like I
Yeah.
maxed BBM2, I maxed the DraftKings $20. I did not max the puppies. I had like, whatever, maybe like $200 of action across the 3
Yeah.
puppies.
Real quick, the people got to know: fast draft or slow draft?
I am all fast draft. Like
Yes.
slow drafts, like I did some slow drafts and it was literally like the bane of my existence sometimes. It was a chore. It was literally a chore for me. And
Yep.
and like so I'm gonna ask Underdog for if my draft was a fast or slow, because I can't really tell that anymore. But almost assuredly it was a fast. And like I play chess and I'm a strong chess player. And in chess, you play speed chess and bullet chess. And like for those who don't know, I did some streams with Pete in the summer on his YouTube channel about chess, and we did some best ball ones. And I do firmly believe like doing like the speed chess brain of just like being able to like calculate really quickly, that correlates a ton to like
Oh yeah.
I'm personally never in doubt about what I'm going. Like I draft almost immediately. Like I'm like, okay, I want this player. And so I'm big on player takes, not purely roster construction. I had huge fades in my portfolios. I had huge stands. I was so wrong about some things. So wrong. Like, but I was so right about some things too. Like just some examples is like I had 0 LaVisca teams on Underdog. I had 0 Jerry Judy teams.
I mean, they're just to hop in, their ADPs. Like, I think even anyone that was a proponent of Jerry Judy or Visca would say, particularly on Underdog, that they were memed into the most absurd ADP ever, right? It was almost to the point where they couldn't pay off their ADP because of, this is a new, like you've talked about, this is a new game. There's not a lot of content creators, right? So the handful of content creators happen to be fans of Visca. He's probably like a 9th or a 10th round pick, like in what he should be. He gets memed to like the late 6th round on Underdog. It's like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, like I was fading him in the 10th. I was like, well, I just think like I don't see how he outscores Gabriel Davis or Cole Beasley. Like I just think they're better picks. And then he became like 3 rounds more expensive. I was like, wow, I'm for sure fucking fading that.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, for those who don't, if this is your first year playing best ball, like last year I stumbled upon best ball just like being on DraftKings. There was no ad, there was no commercial, there was nothing. I just like found this thing. I was like, well, I love fantasy football. Like I think I'm pretty sharp at this. I mean, there was no content creators really that I knew of. Maybe people were doing it, but and like I had heard in the past about these like, these smaller contests. I just was not that interested in investing the time for something that couldn't have a huge payoff. I mean, crazy to like, batshit crazy to like realize the equity and like bank first, right? Like, but like that's just kind of how I was thinking about it. I was like, I didn't really want to do, something that wouldn't like change my life if I like, because I did a lot of drafts, a lot of fast drafts. Like this whole summer I was grinding it. And I would
you want to have the payoff, right? That's how I feel too. And that's why we'll get into maybe some of these other kind of best ball strategic conversations. But like when people talk about like, and I saw you post a little bit about it on Twitter where people talk about like, I'm just trying to get teams through. Like, yes, of course, in order to reach the finals or whatever and have a shot, you need to get teams through. I agree. However, like, and you also talked about the payout structure. Like, I'm not going to invest 6 months of my life and drafting every day, multiple times and hours and hours and hours on this if the payoff isn't so great. And then I also want to play for the real life-changing money, right? Like you said, look, no one is scoffing at 250,000. The guy, I talked to the guy on Twitter who won 2nd place. Like, awesome. That's amazing. But to drop from $1 million to $250,000 is such a drastic change. Peter and I got top 10. We were top 10 in 160,000 man field.
Yeah.
And like you make, each of us made 10 grand or something like that. Like
Yeah,
I mean, that's 10 grand. It's nice, right? But like,
that's
you
it.
know, but you know, who really cares, honestly, at the end of the day, right? So that's why this playing for first thing, and I saw you post a little bit about it. So that also made me excited. You're a fast draft guy, and you're a play for first guy. So this is like the perfect scenario for me to bring you on, because you can just like feed me confirmation bias.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a second. But I mean, I guess we should ask, what was your day like? Because you didn't really have access to.
Oh my
since
God.
you and Pete split it, you're getting like secondary sweats, and I believe he was in like Miami too at like a
He was
party, so I'm sure he wasn't like.
And he was hammered. And he was hammered drunk.
Yeah.
It was. So we're turning this into an interview for me, but it is really funny for anyone ever that has to experience this, which I'm sure other people will. It was one of the most uncomfortable situations ever. Like if we were stone dead, you know, and had no shot of winning, who cares, right? You know, if you didn't have Jamar Chase, it's like, okay, I would never even message Peter. Like I just would have just watched the games and sweated my DFS teams. Of course, we have Jamar Chase. We had Sony Michel, who was incredibly low owned and had a good enough game. I didn't love
seeing that before that's why I was like, oh, yikes.
You know, with 2% Sony Michel or whatever, who
and one of the biggest leverage spots you could have off a cup.
Yeah, exactly. So like, and we didn't have Mark Andrews, we had Kyle Pitts, right? So anyway, I felt like you talked about leverage from a leverage perspective. We were in a really good spot, and it all started to come together really quickly. You know, in terms of like JT doesn't go off, Cup doesn't go off, Andrews doesn't go off. Our guys are having good games, blah blah. We have Chase, etc. And we had
Mac Jones is like 22 points in the bank at minimum. Like
exactly.
He ran pure on some like Wilkerson touchdowns. Like I don't even know who the hell that is.
With a Cowboy stack and Devontae and MVS, and like, so we were in a pretty good spot. I actually thought if anyone was going to catch you, I think we were probably the favorite to catch. Obviously, that didn't. The Cowboys were just so bad, and Gallup got hurt. Right? We ran a little bit bad with Pitts and Gallup both getting hurt, but. For me, to your point, it was the most uncomfortable sweat I've ever had in my life. Right? I've played DFS for a long time. I've had sweats. I've done been to live. Lucky enough to be to live finals. I've done all of those sweats. There is nothing worse, particularly on Underdog. Shout out Underdog. You know, this is not shade. I love your platform. Sweating the live scoring of Underdog when you have access to it, like you did, is hard enough, right? Because it's very, very delayed for anyone that doesn't know.
It wasn't. They fixed that, so it was. Okay. It was for, and you know, like this is like new. Of course, Underdogs knew they're going to keep on getting better. They did. Like by I believe the semifinals, it was fixed. By finals, it definitely was. Like points were like immediate.
Good. Well, I didn't make any finals on Underdog. And super quick side, you mentioned Isaiah McKenzie. I lost in the big dog, my best team, which was
I saw that.
So live to a freaking Isaiah McKenzie big dog team. But so, you know, Peter and I are obviously have split equity in this team. We drafted it on his stream. So like, it's just the best.
And I watched some of that. And I disagreed with like taking Devontae because I had just thought that I had no problem taking a wide receiver there because we can get into this later, but like I was way underfield on Henry Kamara. I had literally almost none. And obviously one of those was probably a good process, good result. One was bad process, good result.
Yeah, right.
All of those are, you know, that's the other fascinating thing. And so I just thought because like I literally had McCaffrey Adams team. So that's why I was like, I'm a big guy about changing. You know, unique combinations, and that's something I try to do a lot. Like I had 24% Steph Diggs on Underdog. That's a first round pick. I think that was clearly wrong, even if Steph Diggs has the best season, because I think
wrong too high, wrong.
It was wrong
too overweight.
Yeah, it was wrong for me to go too overweight on a first round pick. And I'm not going to lie to you. Part of it was I knew I could not manage making a finals and watching someone else have the Buffalo stack. And like dead serious. I was like, I just like, you know, you have to understand what you can and can't live with. And I do not want, because last year Josh Allen to Diggs did win it. And I I had
Yep.
quite a bit of that, but so I like I should have been some of my digs percentage should have also been Eckler and Kelsey and these guys that I did like, but I was just kind of like stubbornly like, well, let's just take digs and figure it out. But I mean, I do think embracing variance is a very good thing to do, which we can
Yeah.
do a lot of different ways for this contest. Like it depends what you're doing, but yeah, man. I mean, total wild ride, and I'm sure it was for everyone in the finals. And I really hope, I saw Justin post this, and this is something I thought too. Justin Herzig is like, I think it's a no brainer for them to get a real live final in the
100%.
future. And I'm sure COVID, like that shit's a disaster now. But once
Yeah.
that hopefully plays out, but that's also not easy because it's like, okay, Thursday night games finish, and so everyone's got to get there by Sunday. You have like a week to plan 160 people or whatever.
Yeah. Definitely tough. The DFS sites do it, particularly DraftKings does it fairly well. They still run, for so say like the Fantasy Football World Championship. There is still, live final qualifiers leading up to like the Monday Night Football game before the, like Showdown. You can win your way in on Showdown on Monday Night Football. You got to fly out in 3 days, and so they also do. DraftKings also does a King of the Beach qualifier, which is like a 2-round, a little bit actually similar to best ball, where you have to win your way in on the week before. So it's like, again, Monday, you don't know until Sunday night, Monday or whatever. Really quick before we keep this is incredible best ball conversation, but I have to get, before we dive into that, the people need to know a little bit about your background. You mentioned, you're sitting outside at a bar in December, which people like me are obviously clearly jealous. You're sweating. I'm in freaking St. Louis. It's like, 5 degrees outside. But just a little bit about your background. Again, you mentioned, your obviously your job in chess and everything like that, but just kind of like where does Liam come from, and like how did you get into best ball in general?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a small town. I would say my like introduction to gambling was the poker boom. Like the moneymaker boom. I remember watching that. I remember watching that and being like, oh, I could do that. And like I've always loved strategy games. Love strategy games. Chess I remember my first chess memory. I was 5 or younger, and I was watching my dad play, and he like did a tactic, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like she can't save both her pieces. He did the tactic to my sister, and I still remember that memory. And so, like I was the New Hampshire high school state champion one year. Which New Hampshire is a really small state. Like that's not a big chess state. But so yeah, I did that. I mean, I went to school, and I was actually a teacher. I was a teacher a couple years ago.
Oh wow!
So I
what did you teach? What did you teach?
So I got a degree in economics, and I worked for some forensic economics place, which that's what it was passionless. I did not want to do it for the rest of my life. And then I went to work some tech startup job. I hated that. And I played in a chess tournament when I was living in New Hampshire. I live in southern New Hampshire, or I did. And so I played in a chess tournament when I did, because all my friends had moved away, and I was working in Boston. I was commuting like 2.5 hours, like
Oof.
2 hours on this bus. I was working on the bus. I was doing this shit I did not care about at all. I hated it. But I played a chess tournament. I saw an ad for a job teaching chess, and I always knew that like I liked kids, because I've been working these like kind of corporate jobs, and I just could not stand the people like riding an elevator with, like talking about some Netflix show I could give a fuck about, or it just like I was like, please stop.
The weather you show in, like, how do you? Oh my God, what about that weather? Right, the typical corporate bullshit.
Like, yeah. I was like, oh my God, please give like I always knew I liked kids because they don't complain. They're funny. They're so funny. Like they're so pure.
Pure.
So pure. Yeah. So I I called up this, I emailed this place. I was like, hey, I see you need a chess teacher, and I was a decent teacher player at this point. I was like 1,300. It's not that strong. Like the kids I taught later became stronger than that, but they got back to me like, great, yeah, come in for a demo interview. And so I go in. I drive to New York City, and I go in and I do my interview. And knowing what these schools wanted, like I probably gave uh, the worst lesson they. First of all, I used to be a bad public speaker, which I'm not anymore after being a teacher, because the way I would do public speaking is I would like sit down and try to like brute force memorize everything I was going to say. Like literally, I would write out a script, and I would just like I had the memory to like recall that and say it, and so it's so robotic, right?
Yeah.
It was like
Yep.
and so I'm giving this school. It was a charter school system, and they're really intense, right? And for those that don't know, a charter school is a public school, but it's like a lottery system to get in. And I'm not trying to debate the merits of public versus charter school. They all have their own pluses and minuses. But anyways, I was told that I was set up to fail because I was told that my job was to teach a kindergarten class, 30 kindergartners, how every single chess piece moves in 10 minutes.
Oh,
And
wow.
I had no previous knowledge of doing a group thing like this, so I didn't know what was feasible or not. I like made a Word document book with like printouts and coloring sheets. I came there prepared with this, like they're like, "What is that? Throw that away. You don't need that." I was like, "Okay, so we're not doing like you don't have time for that." I'm giving my lesson. Kids are raising their hand. I'm like pulling them up, like, "Yeah, come on up. Like, say what you want." Meanwhile, the principal's in my ear. She's like, "You were boring. You were robotic." Literally what she's saying, and I'm like okay, that's not helpful, but trying my best. So I bomb the demo part, and then we do the interview part, and I'm very like kinetic, like ADHD. So I'm like rocking in my chair like this, and like the interview part I could crush because I can speak, and so I'm doing great in that part. But she goes, "Stop moving your chair." So I was like, okay. And so anyways, bomb that. And at this point, I had quit my job. I like gave my 2 weeks. I was just like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I thought maybe I'd go to like Asia to teach English or something. And so the interview happened, and they were like, okay, great, we get back to you in 24 hours. I said, awesome. Okay. So I waited 4 days, no email, checked in, waited like 7 days, no email. I checked in. And then I just like kind of like quit out after like the third or fourth email they ignored. And I'd like given up and I didn't know what to do. And the day I gave my 2 weeks, I got a call having no plan. And they're like, hey, so you still, this was like months later. Like, so do you still want to be a chess teacher? I remember the call. I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of surprised to be hearing from you because you straight ghosted me, but I would love to. And she goes, yeah. And so I was a chess teacher at a school in New York City for 3 years.
Wow.
And then COVID happened. And, I did the remote thing for a little bit. And then I jumped ship to work for chess.com, the largest internet chess website, and Chess Kids, which is part of chess.com. And I had built a strong program using Chess Kids, so that's how I knew it. And I mean, my kids, like I built a very strong team. Like my kids would go to nationals, girls nationals, the state championship. They're strong players, and so.
Might have a small delay. What a story. What a story. Liam, when you unfreeze, we'll add Liam back in. I mean, from the corporate world with an econ background. Oh, here we go.
Sorry about
there
that.
We go. No, you're fine.
My internet's not the best where I am.
It's all right. You have money to upgrade that now. No, I was just saying that it's so cool. Like I love that why I'm excited about this entire like Wednesday show is just like everybody has the most unique and usually like honestly weird backgrounds, right? I do too. Like hearing that, right? And then seeing, there's so many people, this best ball space, you talked about kind of how you got passionate and really dove into it this year. I think a lot of people feel that way. Like it's just such a fun game, right? And seeing people like you with like this back, like how I would classify it. You kind of like just like you kind of bounced around a little bit until you found something that fit you, and then you have been able to apply your expertise and your natural skills from everything that you developed over the years into now this new crazy game that we're playing. And then obviously, right, it has worked out very well for you, just 3 days ago. But like it's so fun to hear that. Like I'm like just like enthralled sitting listening to like someone that has like a kind of crazy, right, like that's not like a normal person's been econ into teaching and into tech startups, into teaching, into into quitting your job with no plan, into teaching chess, and then into obviously winning $1 million in best ball. It's such a fun story to hear.
And like I was one of the people who, and I don't think you should be doing this to be clear, but I would I would draft and I would like look at the teams. Like I would like scroll, like I'm getting no benefit from looking at these teams, but I was like, oh damn, that team is really good. That's like,
yeah.
like obsessively checking the teams, which I don't know if I'm going to do that anymore. Probably, like, I don't. Probably I will. I mean, I don't think you need to be doing that, but like I definitely would. I'd find myself like checking rosters and scores, and then like it's wild, dude. Like best ball didn't exist a couple years ago. None of this shit did.
So couple good questions from the chat. First of all, I did want to point out this gentleman. His name is Felix. We called him Tony. I went to high school with Tony. We played on the same high school football team. I've known him since I was a young kid. He won the DK Millie.
Wow.
On that last Najee touchdown.
On that, yeah.
That last Najee.
I don't know what I would have done if I lost that. That is, because we're talking about the difference between first and second. Like you're the flight. Like I just hope the guy didn't know who was in first.
Yeah. Just like, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that. But shout out to Tony. He's here watching, and that's what he was like. It's absolute. The sweat was just absolute torture. Somebody asked. I got to make sure to find it. This is a good question. I think you kind of insinuated that the answer is yes. But do you think that there are things from chess that have allowed
I don't think that's
like
a cheat code. Like I don't think it's like, but like. I do believe chess has a lot of benefits that are not so obvious. And that's why I believe in children learning chess. I think it can do a lot for a person. Like, things that chess teaches kids are things like impulse control, learning to lose, which I think a lot of like fantasy Twitter, to be honest with you, there's a lot of egos in that space. There's a lot of like, I know better type of thing. Like you may have seen me like victory lapping one or two people, which I don't think that's great of me to do, but I only really did it to people who were like directly rude about takes I had. Like, and as
Definitely.
you should just be 100% results oriented because football's not random at all.
The guy that won $1 million says now we have to be results oriented. What a surprise!
No, I mean, like very clearly, everything I did was perfect because you judge the result. You do not judge anything else. So what was the question again? Sorry.
Chess. Any other things from chess that you think?
I mean, obviously it's a strategy game, right? Like, and I would argue it's the best strategy game in the world. It's also a game of work, like at the elite levels to get better. Chess is very exponential in the sense that, for me to get like a little bit better, we're talking about putting in like 8-hour days at this point in my, for the professionals, it's even crazier. So obviously strategy, obviously work, and then the speed chess, just doing like having that speed. I'm never rattled on a fast draft And you can watch back the stream I did with Pete, which funny enough was done like 10 days after or like 5 days after I drafted the $1 million team, I believe. But I could do like 5 or so fast drafts at a time, like, which I did not like. And I really felt I could have done like 10, because I remember one night I did like 5, and then I would like check Twitter on the downtime, just because Underdog's app is so good.
So
that
good. Yep.
it lets you know, like, so I wasn't missing picks. I could queue people if I needed to. I did not do that for my BBM2 portfolio, but I did do it on some puppies, just because, again, what do you win when you win? I was like, well, let me get a couple of these in at a time,
And some of them, which puppy was it that filled in like 5 days or whatever? That was the only way to get any entries in. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was over invested in best ball. So that's why I did not fire a ton of puppies myself, just because I was like, okay, I gotta get you Kia on the line here, So I mean, yeah, definitely with chess. Yeah. Any questions you guys have, I'd be happy to answer.
Let's hit some of these. Let's hit some of these.
Did you debate going with any different draft strats? Absolutely. I had.
Yeah. What was your? Would you mind summarizing kind of your general like structure portfolio, or how you approached things?
I would. So I don't know. I'm gonna get the full breakdown, but again, and for me, it's kind of a struggle about how much I want to reveal, because I do feel like I've identified some edges. Like, obviously, do I believe I identified $1 million edge? No, it just worked out. Like, I do feel like I've identified some edges that I've not heard commonly discussed in the space. And like, I remember watching content by like you and Pete and like Davis sometimes, and like things I was doing, you guys would then talk about like a month or two later, and I would be like, oh, well, that one's gone. Like the jumping in the morning drafts right away, or like the night drafts when like people have fallen asleep. I would do that all the time. And I'm like, well, if others are doing it, it's actually the opposite of a good thing. But as far as my portfolio, I believe I was weighted to 0 running back on Underdog probably pretty heavily. And I don't believe that one strategy works. And I think we were proven by this year that it doesn't, like 0 running back can win, running back can win, hero running back, just taking one can win. I did feel like a takeaway is that I personally might not be doing as many 0 running backs on Underdog, because I did, since I was doing 150 on DK and Underdog, sometimes I would just get my exposure on a different website. For different archetypes of players.
That makes sense.
And so, yeah, my team that won it was obviously a running back start, but I had a ton of 0 running back teams. And like, I believe for a lottery contest like BBM2, your best friend is variance, and you need to embrace that in every way you can, and just accept when you lose. And so, ways I'm thinking about that, and ways I already did that. Maybe you just choose one strategy. You just say, I'm going 0 running back this year, or I'm going running back, and you're super high variance because you are locking your full portfolio into that. But like, a thing I've said for a long time is you cannot diversify yourself to $1 million. You cannot spread out your exposures all the way and just be like, look, I have all my bases covered. And I think the people doing that, they just don't want to lose they don't want to lose all the money they invested, but they're playing too scared. Like, you have to put yourself in a position to win. And we can argue about like advancing the most teams and whatnot. I do believe there's a different strategy for drafting a team that you think will advance at a high degree versus advancing a team that has first place equity. I do think that's different. I think my team that won it was kind of normal. It did, I don't think it was that unique, but what it did have is it had a ton of week 17 correlation. And so, like, when I'm talking about it had a ton of week 17 correlation, which and not correlation that everyone thinks about. Aaron Jones to MBS, that's positive correlation. I remember reading like 4-for-4 stuff about running back to wide receiver. The other correlation I have, for those that don't know, is I had Amari Cooper to Christian Kirk. Obviously, that game everyone thought was like the best game going into the season. If you look at my exposure portfolio, and I'm going to make a tweet sharing the my top 10 exposures at each position and and the draft board for my winning team. But I had a ton of Chris Carson and Penny, actually. And that the lizard brain logic of Lions bad against running backs, I want the guy in week 17.
Yep.
And I mean,
Love it.
people are like, well, you can't prove week 17. Obviously, this year, especially with COVID, was even crazier. I think week 16 was the craziest COVID week, because
Yes.
I had a ton of teams that literally had no players anymore.
Yeah.
But like that worked. Like, team that likes to run the ball versus team that sucks against the run. That actually came to fruition, and then correlating a guy against him. And I wouldn't say I don't say I'm always top of mind about, oh, this is like, I got Rashad Penny, I need him on Raw right now.
Yeah.
But, I would seek it out if I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. And I mean, you're never like, we talked about the fast draft thing. No one is totally perfect, but you being able to, sort of master that fast draft environment, allow you to extrapolate those edges better than everyone else is doing, right? Because you are able on your toes to think about those things and compound them over 100, or more than 150 teams, obviously, because you're maxing a bunch of these different contests. This is a good question about, because you obviously had Aaron Jones, second round Aaron Jones on the winning team. How many teams did you attack Aaron Jones and Devontae specifically?
No, I did not attack Jones. I did attack Devontae a bit in the second round, but and I think that's a lesson for this year. Is like, don't be so afraid, guys. Like, it's crazy that like Taylor dropped, and what's really crazy, Eric, is I was underweight on almost every league winner you could think of on BB. I was underweight on Taylor.
So Cup, Taylor.
Yep.
Debo. I'm trying to Debo, Andrews.
I was overweight, but not. But I attacked the high price tight ends.
Okay.
And he was my least owned of the high guys.
Okay.
About 11%, I think.
The final guy that I would classify as a league winner, I think that there's a league winner from like a season long perspective, not in this, would be Fournette. What about Fournette?
I was team Ronald Jones. I just flat out thought Ronald Jones was better. I just literally thought Ronald Jones was a better pick, and Lenny ran hot in the playoffs, and
and they brought Gio. They brought in Gio. Yeah, that was what a whiff. What a whiff that was. That was miserable. But like you said, as you have clearly established on this show, the results are all that matters. And you won $1 million. So the Rojo people were clearly.
I'm gonna get that no regrets tattoo across the chest. I'm gonna get the only results or something. We're working in progress on that. Yeah.
Yes. So obviously you talked about some of your strategies, but I do think this is interesting in the context of what you said about embracing variance, and I could not possibly agree more. It's something that I cannot stop thinking about since just it's only been 3 days, but attacking maybe a specific strategy or maybe two specific strategies, because something I did over 150 teams was diversified my structures, right? Obviously your winning team was RB, but is there something you have taken away from your experience over this last 6 months or 7 months or whatever, that is a structure take that you want to be more invested in, or are you going to kind of continue what you're doing, or how are you thinking about that?
It's so hard because each year is like literally like a play here or there, and something is better, right? So like, It's so hard to have sweeping takeaways in reality, because each season is unique, and like, and you could run it a million times and it would never turn out the same. But my intuition is maybe I should not do let's start here. I qualified 19 out of 150 for the playoffs, which is under expectation.
Mm-hmm.
I believe 25, I think.
25, yeah.
Yeah, 25 out of 150 is 16 point whatever percent. So I was under expectation. I qualified 6 of those 19 into the semifinals. So
wow.
So crushed
That's amazing.
That. And you know why? Because I had 60% Gabriel Davis. And Gabriel Davis scored 2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns,
So
yep.
That's an example of something that's high variance, really on a player, but I think the price matters. Gabriel Davis was like 10th round or cheaper, and it was hard for a lot of the guys around him to hurt me. I don't think that's the same thing as having like 60%, 4th round pick or, whoever. But my intuition is I might be going more running back on Underdog, but why I brought up the amount of teams I qualified is I qualified an underweight team, like just pure math. My teams are underweight, but my 19 teams that I qualified were really unique because they did not have these league winners.
Yep.
So they were just being brought. They were just all strong teams, and I crunched the DraftKings salary of my players, of my roster before just in estimating the salaries of Claypool and Aaron Jones, and I had we talk about making a super team. I think my starting lineup was 50, and this is excluding defense. It was 55,000, but my backup 8 was 45,000. So I had 100,000. I had a fully live team. No one was hurt other than Justin Fields, which that arguably is positioned for it to happen in.
Yep.
And so maybe I'll go running back more, but I think 0 running back was so cool because those teams that made the playoffs are already unique-ish, because just by byproduct of 0 running back.
Yep.
I think it's way harder to make it unique, like Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones start when you could get those guys.
Yeah, that was something I found fascinating from watching the Underdog guys, where they're going through all the top teams, and it's okay, RB, and then we finally get to a 0 running back team, and it was still like I said, again, I'm a little bit biased because Peter and I had a 0 running back team, but you run down it, and your point about the strength of the team is so true. Not even just with 0 running back, but when you get a unique team through, it's guaranteed to be so strong. Because there's so many teams that got carried by Cooper Kupp, got carried by Jonathan Taylor, by Mark Andrews or whatever, and they have all these hurt guys, or maybe they're not hurt, but they have Terrace Marshall. They have these guys that are just putting up zeros every week. But when you have the guy putting up 30 every week, it's of course you're going to continue to advance. Versus you have this super well structured, but just 1 to 18 or 1 to 20, really, really strong team. And then we see what happens with that, right? Obviously, you had Jonathan Taylor, but outside of Jonathan Taylor, you didn't have anybody else. And so it's look, when I have 18 guys that all are strong plays on a week, right? You would play all those guys in DFS.
Yeah.
You would play all of them. And so when you get that through to the final, that's when this is what we're seeing what happened. Liam wins $1 million because you have that just 1 to 18 strong team through to the final.
Yeah, and I forgot the point I was going to make. It'll come back to me though.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another good question from Leland. What do you think about you talked a little bit about this, and I just wanted you to elaborate. Yeah, I wanted you to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah. So I was not taking Kamara. I was not taking Derrick Henry all that much. I was taking Steph Diggs there. I was taking Travis Kelce. I was taking Austin Eckler there. My best teams on my DK were they had an Austin Eckler in the 3rd, and I'm a big person on differentiating the build, but I remember what I was going to say. The whether 0 running back or whether running back is correct really is only determined what happens week 14, 15, 16. So if Devontae Adams goes 50, clearly you need to have him, right?
Yes.
If Jonathan Taylor goes 50, then you need to have him. So what was so interesting is last year from the finals I could look at, what mattered was what mattered was the unique combination of first round players that you could not otherwise get. Like one guy had
Yeah.
the guy who won on DK last year had Kamara and Devontae Adams. So like that was something that you could not get when I started drafting. And so like he must have drafted at the beginning of the season. But if you take away Jonathan Taylor and Aaron Jones, not only do I still win the million, but I still advance in all my playoff brackets too, I believe.
Yeah.
Do I advance in the regular season? Probably not. But it wasn't the high price guys that did it for me. It was the cheap guys I hit on.
Yeah, Amonra, and Penny were the two definitely the
Jeff
biggest.
Wilson had me
Jeff
great.
Wilson,
Great week 15.
Week 15, right? Yep, exactly. I think that's like the most interesting part of all this is everyone wants to get really married to the results of individual players. And then because you get married to the results of the individual players, that in turn puts you on a structure, right? So like Jonathan Taylor, just because of what Jonathan Taylor did, that turns into a structure conversation, right? But like the same thing, as your point was so perfect. If Devontae Adams did what Jamar Chase did on Sunday, or if Tyreek Hill did what Jamar Chase did on Sunday, the conversation sorry, you wouldn't have won. But the conversation we would be having right now, you and I, would be a very different one, right? Because Devontae Adams was the 50 spot. He was only available in the first, maybe the second for a short period of the offseason. But how do you think about, just like an overarching theme? That's something I've been trying to communicate for sure, but also wrap my own head around, honestly, about this. Like, we see the results, but how do you gather some takeaways? Because we want to learn from what just happened, but we don't want to be like misguided in the future by clearly what was a one in multiple million outcome, right?
And I mean, honestly, like this is not something I'll have a perfect answer for right now, because just the way I feel like I've had so many eureka moments of on best ball, and I've forgotten half of those too. Like I'm not writing them down. I'm like, oh damn, that's really like. And it's such a long grind that like I'll be like thinking in depth about it. And I did my drafts in all different sorts of headspaces too. Talking about hammered, high, and maybe that's just a way of randomizing your own drafts.
Well, do you remember what the million one was? I need to take notes for this.
Well, it was June 19th, so let me check my notes. I don't know. No, but I mean, I have a ton of takeaways that like I've just kind of like thought about, but some of them, a lot of my takeaways were advancing in the regular season, which matters, but it doesn't matter at the same time,
right.
Like something I remember I did say in the preseason to Pete was like, when you have a guy like a LaVisca, who a lot of sharp people like, maybe you should just fade, choose someone that sharp people like, not just because they like it, but because they're sharp. So if you assume that you're going to be competing with sharp people, find something, because I would listen to a lot of what you said, Eric, and I did not agree with everything you would say. Like some of the players you were like Latavius Murray is a guy I had zero of. I just saw 0 seasons where a 31-year-old running back who I actually thought was going to get cut, like who I thought was going to get cut, would crush me. Or if that did happen, I knew I could live with that result.
Right.
And that was almost, and he even ran pure to even get signed by
so
the Ravens,
so pure.
Yeah. So like that, but Darrington Evans was one of my highest exposed player. That was a guy I for sure like agreed with. So I think it's important to listen to people, but don't, no one is speaking gospel here, like have your own takes, be real with yourself. How much do you know about football? Because I just believed like I knew good plays and bad plays. Like I had a ton of blanking his name. Who's the Jags wide receiver who's fast and got hurt?
Chark.
I had a ton of Chark, and that would have worked out. I believe Chark would have scored 10 touchdowns if he didn't get hurt. And part of the reason I faded Visca was because he ran a slow 40. And I just didn't.
He's very slow. Yes, he's
Yeah,
very
I
slow.
was like, this guy's not gonna crush. He's not an elite athlete. Like I had a lot of Kasicki because he's an elite athlete. Like
Right.
draft the grown ass men's at positions where it matters. Like being like, of course it's not the end all be all combine, but it matters. But like, that like I kind of regretted the lack of Judy exposure once he started climbing, but I knew I was not going to shoot myself in the foot and start taking him once he jumped a couple rounds because I already missed
Right.
him.
I think I drafted Judy. It was really funny. My best BBM team was literally the first team I drafted of the entire year. I had no idea what I was doing. I took 3 quarterbacks and 3 tight ends. The team I would never draft it the way I drafted it again, but I just hit on everything. And your point, why I bring that up is because I love your point that it was like I drafted that team with 0 outside bias. Obviously, the structure bias I could have used at that point, but I was like, whoa, I really like the Rams. I really like Jonathan Taylor. I really like, I really like this. I really like Debo. I really, and the next thing you know, you just hit on the stone cold nuts, right? You have a Ram stack with Cooper Kupp and JT and Debo and all these good picks. Late Elijah Moore, late whatever, and it was me before being subjected to absolutely anything else.
And I
And
think
your
that's a challenge because it's like I would listen to content for a bit, but then I would go into like, okay, I just need a break from listening to everything. And I would say I did a pretty good job of not having a ton of bias. But then I watched I definitely feel like I started doing more zero running back after listening to some of what you guys did. So
yeah.
that was probably from listening to people on the screen who I felt was sharp in some aspects.
Do you think there's how do you toe that line, right? Like I think that's got to be one of the biggest hurdles. I have it too, right? Obviously, I talk to Peter, I talk to Pat Crane, I talk to Ben Gretch, I talk to the list goes on, right? And these people are very smart. They know, I'm not saying they know more than me about everything, but there are absolutely certain things that I'm like, man, I agree with you. That's a really good point. There are things we disagree on too, but figuring out when to listen to the people that you think are sharp and when to. I loved your point about like if there's this guy that Visca, right, was the perfect example of all the sharp people are on, or all the sharp people are on Judy, the sharp people are on Ayuk, right? And it's like, yeah, but like he kind of has to have the absolute stone cold ceiling at this new price you guys have steamed him to. I love that point, but how do you toe that line between, I think you're the perfect person to like, how do I listen to Peter because he's, his streams are giving me very sharp information, but not take everything as gospel.
Yeah, I think that's hard, and that's something I need to think about more. I mean, for me, sometimes it would just be like take a week off of listening, maybe, or maybe the answer is like you sit down at the start of the season and you like write down your thoughts if you're going to be serious about this, and then you're allowed to change your thoughts, but it's good to get your initial thoughts on paper. Like these are the offenses I want to attack, something like that, because at least you would have that down as like this is what I feel about football. And I don't think everyone that does best ball should be doing that because some people have not been watching football every day. Like I watch it every Sunday. I've never missed a Bills game. Like not everyone is doing that. So some people should lean totally on, site rankings and whatnot and projections. And I think it really depends, on a lot there.
And you can win, and you can win both ways, right? You can absolutely be successful being. I don't watch football, but I'm going to take these rankings, projections, game theory, correlation, all those different levers for sure. But I think I would guess just from being in this space now, like so heavily invested for a significant period of time, that most people come in and they have, just like you outlined, they have their takes, right? Like we got some, we got another DJ Chark fan in the chat, right? And it's like, if you believe in DJ Chark and I'm on a stream saying I don't like DJ Chark, who gives a shit? Like I don't know, like I have my opinions on players, and like you talked about, I will go to my freaking grave with the Darrington Evans the discussion. Like I'm
He
not.
would have smashed. He would
Yeah,
not. He would have smashed. I
yeah,
believe that too.
yeah. I'm not holding that L. I don't care what anybody says to me. Latavius Murray was a horrible call. I agree with you. Like ever like that. But like that's the point, right? Is like Debo was my highest owned wide receiver in best ball. I feel obviously very good about that. I have other things that I was so. I mean, that also led me. I was drafting Trey Lance. Trey Lance was clearly not the right. But like that point is
Trey and
everyone,
Justin Fields. Those are my top guys after Josh Allen.
which is so funny, right? That like so again, as we have outlined a few times now, the results of what Liam did are the only things that matter to take away from this season. And he was also drafting Trey Lance and Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, you could, if you would just watching back that stream with Pete, like I shit on a couple league winners. I was like, oh yeah, Burrow. There's no way Burrow can crush us because he's a statue guy, and
Yeah.
like I faded the statues. I faded Tom Brady. I faded Stafford. I faded.
Yep.
I had a lot of Burrow in the beginning, but then I started fading.
He was much cheaper at the beginning. He really got a lot of steam.
Once he was in 10th, I was just like, you know what, 10th round Burrow versus a guy who can score. Like, I think something that like I don't really want to say this because I do believe this, but other people are going to say it is. I do think taking the people on good offenses is going to drastically change ADPs next season.
Yep.
Just like think about who do you think is going to score points, because that does matter. And I already was doing that, but I just straight up don't like Tom Brady because I grew up in New England as a Bills fan. So like
yeah.
It was not hard to fade that. And like, as the results show, that was correct because of week 15.
Yeah,
clearly
right.
Clearly that was a bad, like that was just bad, but
yep.
I had a ton of Hurts, and it made no sense why he was getting cheap to me. I knew there was some uncertainty, but I would definitely say like uncertainty is like a friend of yours.
Yes. That is a phenomenal comment as we near the end here, but this has been just seriously an amazing conversation, and some of these comments are so good. Imagine being a Bills fan. It's a pretty damn good time to be.
Hey, and we're winning the Super Bowl, and I got a lot of gauntlet teams just stacked Buffalo, I would definitely say that's a takeaway. We're gonna end this soon here, but like, if you're a Colts fan, why not be over leveraged on Jonathan Taylor? If you're truly like a Colts fan and not just someone that DFS has jaded you from sports, which that definitely happens to people.
Yeah.
I try hard not to let that happen to the Bills with me, but I'm going to be definitely releasing some tweets about the data on everything. So, and if you guys have any questions, hit me up on Twitter. I like to be pretty open.
At Chess Liam on Twitter. You see it on the screen, but at Chess Liam on Twitter, he will he's gonna bless us with all of the goodness from
all the results, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. I'm excited to see it. This was seriously one of the most fun. I've done like way too many videos, streams, articles, whatever. This was one of the most fun conversations I've ever had since like really deep diving into best ball. I really, really appreciate you coming on. Obviously, you could be like floating out on a boat somewhere, swimming in a pile of cash, and you chose to be here. So I really appreciate that. Is there anything?
I want to help grow the game. This was an honor to come on, and I'm sure we'll definitely get together this summer and like do some regular streams together and whatnot.
Definitely.
And all that like more granular data and whatnot.
I would like to do when we've had a lot of like strategic conversations and stuff here, and but we're 3 days removed from you winning Best Ball Mania. When we get time, both of us honestly get time to really kind of think more thoughtfully about what our takeaways are, right? There's people are asking questions about like, okay, should I go RB in all my drafts now? It's like, well, when we get to, in a couple of months from now, because we're probably going to start drafting again in like 3 months or 4 months.
I will draft the day BBM3 opens.
Same. Well, maybe that's what That's what we'll do when BBM opens. We'll get. I'm sure they'll let us know ahead of time. We can hop on a stream with the person who won BBM, and we can be like, okay, here's the first takes, like the absolute. Here's our first total gut takes. We'll get Liam's cheat codes for next year,
Well,
because
and
obviously you had them this year.
I don't know if you remember, but this year the BBM2 opened before the NFL draft even, or before,
Did it?
after the draft, but before the schedule was known.
Oh, before the schedule. Yeah. You're right. Yep.
Bye weeks was not a thing. like, and like my early teams had I had like Herbert Allen teams, which were like unique, you know?
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
More credence at week 7. Whatever next year's week 7. Maybe I hope they do it again where it's just week 7, so I can keep that bit going. But whatever next year's week 7, we can do that.
And I'll be jumping on a show with Pete tomorrow too. So
perfect.
We'll be talking more about this. And thank you so
Anything
much
else?
for having me on, Eric.
Anything else you want to plug? Pete's show. What do you got? I know you talked about some of your results. Anything else you want to bring up?
Guys, learn chess, chesskid.com. I'm a company man.
Love it.
Gotta learn it. If you have kids, definitely get your kids on there. And nothing really to plug yet, but I'm sure I will, hopefully. Would like to make some content, help people improve, and just help grow the game.
Yeah, make sure to go follow Liam on Twitter at ChessLiam. He's gonna bless us with all of his knowledge. I'm already like getting on the edge of my seat, waiting for you to post everything on Twitter. Maybe start producing some content and all of that.
I think I'll do that today with the tweet of the data.
You've even got me now. You talked about your story earlier of like rocking back and forth in my chair. Now I'm sitting and doing that. But seriously, Liam, thank you. And for everybody in the chat, thank you so much for the questions and obviously watching the stream. I will be back on Friday at this time for the first off-season draft show. Every Friday we're going to do something a little bit different, whether it's maybe there's 2022 NFL drafts. Maybe there's playoff drafts. Maybe the MLB's coming soon. We're going to bounce around a little bit in the best ball space and start diving into some more drafts. And every Wednesday we'll be back with, I was going to say people like Liam, but is there really anybody like Liam? Nobody else has won $1,000,001.
Well, I mean, Herzig's story is almost crazier. Like to reach the finals and top of the finals like that.
It really, really impressive. And Herzig will be on. And shout out to Herzig. I bumped him. I had talked to him a couple weeks ago about coming on the first episode, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm interested." And I was like, "Sorry, Liam. I'm getting Liam to come on."
You're going to be grinding MLB. Did you do NBA best ball?
I did NBA as well. I got a bunch of NBA teams on both sites. Ironically, I felt DraftKings was the softest in terms of NBA, just like it was kind of for NFL. And my underdog teams are so much better. Like,
what I wanted to say about that before we end here is,
yes,
I thought DraftKings maybe was softer, and you have like pure random guys taking like Tom Brady in the first. Yep. But I thought there was a lot more groupthink on Underdog, which groupthink is your friend if you can recognize that.
That's a really, really, really good point. I actually think that might be one of the best lessons that we can take away, is that when an entire market is doing the same thing on that one individual site, right? I'm not saying there's an easy way necessarily to manipulate it, but if you can be thoughtful about that and think about how can I adapt to this. Everybody is taking Brandon Ayuk in the 4th round and Jerry Jeudy and Laviska, whatever. Yeah. Right. I mean,
I liked Ayuk. Yeah.
We all made. I mean, I have an infinite amount of mistakes that I made last year, but I think your point is that maybe one of the most perfect ones to leave on, that we can really analyze this as a market, as opposed to, there's definitely player takes, there's definitely team takes, all of that. But at the end of the day, we're playing in this big market that we need to try to figure out how to manipulate. And you outlined a ton of really good ways for us to do that next year. So like I said, perfect thing for us to leave on. Anything else, Liam, to drop for the people before we head out?
No, just Happy New Year to everyone. And hope to see you in the 2023 best ball streets, or 2022, I guess.
And maybe 2023 too,
I'll be there.
Yeah, I was gonna say you'll definitely be there. I will be there too, and I will also see you guys on Friday here on Spike Week.
Make sure you like and subscribe, guys. Come on.
Exactly. Listen to the millionaire. Like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on Friday. See ya.